Okay, you guys may have seen some of my singing quartet sequences that are available online that I've already done. If you have a request for any in particular, I can go ahead and do that for you. I do ask $25 per requested song, and then after I do create that, I do make them available online later on for other people. This is just to help kind of offset some of my time that I do spend, because it does take somewhere between 1 and 3 hours per minute of sequencing. But this is a tutorial to show you what the actual process is and how to actually do this using Light-O-Rama. So here's some various sequences that I have already made available. More recent one is a Carol of the Bells, and what these three quartet sequences are. So as you can see, it can be rather complex in regards to understanding, how to turn on each side the way, just when I want, and also turn all the lights on and off in order to be able to actually make it look convincing that they're actually singing this. The song I'm going to go ahead and use for this demo is Getting in the Mood for Christmas. So the first step is to go ahead and get your MP3, get it into Audacity. You will need to also export the audio file as a WAV format for Papagayo, which I can go ahead and show in a little bit. But one of the first steps is to go ahead and find the lyrics and go ahead and make sure that it is accurate. So, for example, go ahead and have a notepad up right here, and I can go ahead and start off and just start previewing it. And then have to make sure that the lyrics I have are going to be accurate. They have to be extremely accurate, because once we start this process, and you cannot really go in and modify these words one at a time and then have it redone. It's very, very difficult to actually work with. So, looks like the lyrics are good. So what I'm going to do is, because the words aren't too jumbled together, they're not too incredibly fast, I'll go ahead and take one line at a time. I won't break it up any further than that. Okay, so the first lyric starts right around here. One of the first things you need to do is you got to go ahead and go up here and go to Add New. You need to add a label track. Okay, so what this is going to do is this is where we're actually going to insert the actual text for the actual lyrics. So what we can do is we can go ahead and highlight this section and just a little bit more, just a smidge more. Okay, so from here I have this section highlighted. I'm going to go ahead and just do a Control B, and then I'll go ahead and do a paste. And so now I have this section of text inputted, and I'll go ahead and go through and add the rest, and I'll show you guys the next step. Okay, so I've gone through and I've created 2 tracks, one for the main, one for the backups. Something that's very important to remember when you go ahead and do all your sectionals for your lyrics, that you do not have any overlaps. They can butt up right next to each other, but you do not want to have overlaps. This here is for my main section for the primary character, and then here is for the backups, which I will go ahead and copy to basically 3 out of the 4 trees, so that way that looks correctly. But so then backups. The reason why I separated it the way I did was because the backups have a habit of kind of overlapping the main. So in order to make it look correctly, make it a little bit easier, instead of having to manually do this in Light-O-Rama directly, just go ahead and separate them out. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to go ahead and export this particular track. So I can go ahead and say export labels. This is going to be the backup track. Now when you're ready to go, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and export these label tracks. But the problem is, when you do this in Audacity, the way it's set up right now, export labels, it's plural. what it will actually do is it will merge these two together. Well, we don't want to do that. We actually want to keep them separated. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to delete one of these. Okay, just don't do anything weird. Don't close it. I'm going to go ahead and say export labels. Here's my main.txt. Save that. Okay. Now I can just easily just do an undo. So that way the delete that I just did comes back. I can delete my main track now. And go ahead and export that one. That one's going to be backup.txt. Okay. So now when I go to look at these files, here's my main, and so you can see there is all of the primary lyrics. So that's the primary singer right there. That's perfect. And then the backup singers are all separated out. So you have all these timing marks already set up and ready to go. Okay. Okay. For exporting audio, go ahead and go up to File, go to Export Audio, and then from here you can go ahead and type whatever it is that you want. And then this will go ahead and save it as a WAV file. We'll go ahead and take the same data and we'll go ahead and tack it onto the actual file. And there you go. So now you have a WAV file, and this is ready to be imported into Papagayo. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and open up Papagayo. And then from here I'm going to go ahead and say open. I'm going to go ahead and open the actual WAV file that I've already set up. Okay, so here's my WAV file with nothing else in it. First thing I'm going to go ahead and do is go ahead and put in my main voice. Say new. I'll go ahead and do this. This is my backups. Okay, so now from here I'm going to go ahead and open up my mains. I'll go ahead and copy everything here, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste it into the main track for Papagayo. Now, the reason why I did this is because when you're doing the process here, the text that we're dumping in here has to be exact with the actual lyrics that we're having in Papagayo. So, but we don't want all these numbers, so you have to go line by line and take out these in order to get these prepped and ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I'll import get the main and the backups in here, and I'll go ahead and show you guys the next step. Okay, so I've cleaned up the lyrics here, so that way it doesn't have those numbers on there. You can go ahead and add some carriage returns in here if you want, so just to help make it easier to organize and actually look at. But just keep in mind, you're really not going to be using this too heavily. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to say breakdown. And when it does this, you're going to find words that are not in the dictionary list. So if this is the case, you can you could try to do this yourself, but the problem is it's going to end up screwing with the process. So what we need to do is we need to figure out which word is in the dictionary. This is probably not in there because of the apostrophe. So if you go ahead and hit cancel, it's rootin', jivin', rootin', and jivin'. Okay, so I broke it down and spread it all over the place. Let's go ahead and say take out the apostrophe, take out the apostrophes, and see if that fixed it. Okay, rootin's still not in there and jivin's still not in there. So what we can try to do is say I can put a G on there, routine, because it's basically the same thing. Let's try that. Okay, so that works. So now that we have a broken down section like this without any error messages, we can go ahead and take that over to the next step. But if you do have multiple voice tracks, you need to make sure you do the same thing for both. So I'm going to have to go through this one as well, and I'll go ahead and there may be a couple words that are not in the dictionary here that is with this. So for example, when I go ahead and do this creeper, for example, it's not in here. But what you can do is you can get something that's really close to it. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is for creeper, I'm just going to go ahead and change this to sneaker, because sneaker is probably a little more of a common word. And then when I go ahead and do the breakdown, no errors. So you may have to play around with a couple of these words. I had to change 3 of them. That was just it was just an example of one in order to be able to get this going. Now, once we get this all set up to where you can do a full breakdown, you have to basically cross-reference this back to your lyric sheets, and you have to make sure that they match. So whatever words you changed on your Papagayo interface, you have to change on your text interface. So what I do now is I go ahead and use this program called PapaAssist. It's found on the Nutcracker website. I go ahead and open up my Papagayo file that I'm working with here. So when you're looking at it, after you've done your breakdown, you're gonna have everything kind of ran together and all stacked like this, right? So, and that's obviously not where everything is. So what I'm going to do here is open it up in PapaAssist. When I open it, it should tell you how many voices, how many phrases you have. You can go ahead and give it the pointers for the actual files that you've created, and then go ahead and do an export. Okay, I'll just do this one for example, and that's pretty much all there is. It's pretty easy. And then from there, I go ahead and just actually open up the actual file. So I'll go ahead and open it up. There we go. So now what it does is it puts each phrase kind of in the ballpark. It may not be perfect, and you know the words are still you still have to adjust the words. So I still have to adjust the words in order to make that make it work out correctly. So it would be close, but definitely needs some adjustments. So now I just go ahead and need to go in and actually sweep. So for example, like this one right here, I need to slide back a little bit, and I might need to slide back one more notch in order to make that O look correctly. That's too long, so I need to slide that back a little bit more. So he's enunciating that. So now I can go ahead and use this as my example. That looks better. And you can also use, if you add these in, you can also use an actual choral tree. So when you do this, you can see how well that actually works out. Make some more fine-tuned adjustments. I would recommend you make sure that you don't have any gaps between, because then it's just going to be it's going to insert a rest in between each one, and that's going to cause more problems there. So you want to go ahead and make sure that they're butted up against each other, or you go ahead and insert a rest if you want it at the end of a word, and then let the space drag out. But if it's a bigger gap like this, it's going to insert a rest. It's not going to be a problem. But for these smaller spots, you don't really want to have that, because you want to make sure that it's a nice polished look. Once you've gone through the Papagayo enough times where you're confident with how the actual everything sounds, just so once you've gone through this and make sure that everything is the way you want it and it looks good on your little demo here, then what you do is go ahead and say export voice, and we're going to go ahead and kick it out as a .dat file. And then from here, what you're going to do is you're going to open a program called Translate to LOR. And so here's my channel configurations right here. So this is for this particular phenome with the actual channel numbers. Not the channel numbers, but the actual row number I'm going to be turning on and off in order to be able to get this to work. I'll go ahead and say load. Go ahead and say main. It's going to go ahead and tell you how many movements in how many seconds. I use the trim leading space options, because that way I can control the timing a little bit better. And from here, you just go ahead and export it out as a .lcb file. This is basically, it's a clipboard file for Light-O-Rama. So now what you're going to do is I'll go ahead and create my initial sequence. So I bring the MP3 in. I don't use any timing marks. I go ahead and just do a free form without anything first. Figure out where the first part is, where the actual vocals are going to start, and I go ahead and insert a single timing mark. Go ahead and say load clipboard. Find the clipboard you just created. Here's my main one. I already had it loaded though. Okay, so from here I use stretch to fit, and then what I'll do is I'll find a timing mark at the beginning, and I'll find a timing mark at the very end. This is basically right when the first vocal starts that I want to use, and then I also want to find where the very last vocal ends for this particular section I'm going to be pasting in. And then what you're going to do is I take my top three are my outline, my eyes open, my eyes closed, but the ones after that are my upper lip, mid lip, bottom, my O's, and my ahs. So from here, all I basically just do is just do a Control V and just paste in. And I already have it in here, so you can kind of already tell that it should already be working. What I'm going to do here is just go ahead and insert another timing mark just so I can just play this particular section. And I can tell that the timing is just a little bit off. The part of the beginning is already set up, but what you can do is you can go ahead and preview this and watch your particular sequence and kind of tell. I can tell the timing is just a little bit off, so what I'm going to have to do is just play with it just a little bit more and just slide this back, and then what I can just do from here is just go ahead and just paste it, and it just shifts it just ever so slightly. And that looked about right. So now I can go ahead and go back, and I can go ahead and test this out. Okay, so just go ahead and make this. Start working on the rest of this here. I'm going to go ahead and turn on these other ones here, so that way I at least have my outline, my eyes, and everything like that all set up. Oops. So get that just the way I want it, right like that. I'll go ahead and show you what it looks like on the real light. So this is obviously a bit of a long process. I still have to go ahead and add the backup files in, backup singers, and I'll go ahead and do the other three, and then after that I'll have to go through and start adding in the transitions and whatnot. So anytime I want some of the trees to light up and not, and then I'll also have to add in all of the eye blinks before this is completed a sequence. Go ahead and create another timing section. We'll go ahead and use a new fixed grid. I just use a default of 0.10, and then from here what I can do is I switch over to the new grid, and this is what I use for my eye blinks. So when I'm looking at this, usually what I want to do is I can either blink in specific parts, like when they're doing an O, because that's think the rock band or something like that. They're really trying to emphasize something. They're a little more emphasis on a particular phenome or whatever. But for the most part, when you're trying to go through these and trying to figure out when you're going to actually be turning these on and off for blinks, usually you want to do it when you only see the mid lip turned on and nothing else. This is basically, it's a rest point. And so it's a perfect point, a perfect place to go ahead and do that without adding extra emphasis to any words or anything like that. Trying to space it out however you can. You don't necessarily have to do it all the time. Like here's another one, but I'm just going to go ahead and skip that one. I'll go ahead and go to another one. Just kind of sloshing around a bit to try and make it at least look semi-random in order to be able to do this. So here's another spot right here I can go ahead and do. Sometimes you can do it like this, where when it's transitioning, whatever. You do a little bit more often in some parts, and then not so often, because you gotta think about it. When you're actually doing a real eye blinks yourself, it's not exactly a predictable thing. Sometimes it's quite often, sometimes it's not. Now, when you're getting into this other area like this, and a nice clear spot, now we have the backup ones coming in. I try to randomize these just a bit more. It's kind of hard to do though, so what I usually like to try to do is basically view my screen so I can see all of them at one time, all four of them, and then I try to kind of scatter it all over the place. So I know that they're all duplicates, so I'll go ahead and come down here. I'll do one here. Number 3 hasn't done it yet, so I'll go ahead and do number 3 right about here. And then so what I'll do is I'll scroll another a section like this,
and then I'll make sure that I at least see something, in each track every now and then. But I'm trying not to make it to where it looks like it's rotating, so that way it still looks. So 4 will fire, then 1 will fire, then 4 will fire, and then number 2. So that way there's no real pattern for the audience to really see, and that's really what the goal is with this. So finding a nice quiet spot in order to add your eye blinks and not make it look completely obvious about when it's actually going to be doing it and how. So once I go ahead and get this, then it's going to be a completed sequence and ready to go ahead and add other elements to the show as I see fit. But this is the starting point for getting quartet sequences going, and I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Again, if you guys need some assistance with any of this, go ahead and send me a message, whatnot. You can find me on Facebook on the Facebook page, Ed's Light Show, as well as you should be able to also comment on the link below here for this YouTube channel. Thanks.